Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We are back again with an exciting guest. We have Amber Renae here with us today. She's a civil engineer, a serial entrepreneur, and TV star who inspires women to discover their wow factor through building their dream digital business, personal branding, and self-love. She is Australia's leading voice in online business. Amber Renae educates thousands of students in all corners of the globe on a range of topics from entrepreneurship, digital marketing, influencer marketing, and the power of personal branding. She's a star of the hit US reality show Dream Life, which documents the creation of her latest e-learning project, and is the author of The Dream Life, the book. Welcome to the show, Amber.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to connect to your audience of badasses.
We are excited to have another badass on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely love your CV. Give us a little bit more about you.
Well, my entrepreneurial journey is not what we see on Instagram these days, which is all hashtag entrepreneur life. I started as a civil engineer building roads and bridges on a construction site, and then left that high-paying, very reliable corporate job to start my first business, which was a fashion design label. I started that business on a sewing machine. I made 4 shirts the first week and sold them, 8 shirts the second week and sold them. And then 5 years later, I had 120 accounts around the world, exported to places like Paris, Tokyo, and LA, and dressed some of the biggest celebrities of the time, which back in the day was Paris Hilton. And this was kind of before social media. So we were doing influencer marketing before influencer marketing was even a thing. I swear I was going to have that business my entire life. It was all I ever dreamed of. But the universe had bigger plans for me. My manufacturer went out of business, which caused me to go out of business. And by that point, I worked myself to near death. I was hospitalized with cancer, stomach ulcers. I was on anti-anxiety and antidepressant tablets and had to declare bankruptcy because I had this huge business debt that I was never going to be able to pay off. So I thought that was going to be the end of my entrepreneur life. I went back to the corporate world and I lasted about a year as an employee. Turns out I'm a very bad employee. And then I got fired from that job and started my second business, which was a fashion consulting business. So I'm sure a lot of your audience are in a consulting type role where you're working one-on-one, you're trading your time for dollars, you're showing up to one client, it gets to the end of the month and you either have run out of clients or you've run out of time, whatever it is. But that was my second business. Again, I started that with just me hustling to try and get clients. 3 years later, I had 2 of the best contracts in the country. I was the fashion editor for Women's Health and Fitness magazine and the resident stylist at our biggest radio and TV network. And I was also a fashion presenter for fashion TV. So I was all over the world interviewing celebrities. And again, I thought this was my dream business. I thought this was all I was ever going to do for the rest of my life, is interview celebrities and dress celebrities for red carpet events. And again, the universe had bigger plans for me. So the effects of the GFC eventually hit my industry and I lost all of my contracts in the space of a month. I was unemployed and unemployable. I tried to go back to the construction site. They wouldn't even give me a job. And I spent about 6 months in very, very deep depression, thinking my life was completely over. I knew my fashion, there was nothing else I could do in fashion. And that's all I ever wanted to do as a child. So I had to, again, pivot, innovate, figure out what I was going to do next. And all that I had was this knowledge. I knew how to run fashion businesses. I knew, I was very successful at that. And back in 2015, my brother said, you need to teach this as an online course. So back then, we didn't know what online courses were. There was no such thing as an online course business, but I was really passionate about helping people. And I just knew I've got something that these other stylists need and I can share it with them. So I sat down one day, got out my iPhone, sat in my wardrobe and recorded my first online course about how to be a celebrity stylist. That online course did 6 figures in the first year and still does 6 figures every year without me touching a single thing in that whole course. It's an evergreen automated course. And then I realized that this is probably a thing. I could probably turn this into a business. So I created my second e-course, monetizing all of my other passions, which was personal branding and publicity, what I learned in my second business. And I taught female entrepreneurs how to do personal branding and how to do publicity. And then I realized I have a lot of information about mindset. Obviously, I've had some very tough periods in my life, and I can share that with other successful female entrepreneurs and how they can grow their business and work on their mindset. So I monetized that passion into my third course. And by then I realized I was really good at creating courses. So I created a course about courses, which is Freedom Funnels. And that is really, this whole business has really enabled me to live my dream life, which is what I now wrote the book on, which shows you how to create this kind of lifestyle, this online business lifestyle, which really is more focused on sharing your passions and helping other people and really creating the kind of life that works for you, whether that's a life filled with travel, whether that's a life where you just get to spend more time with your children, whether that's a life away from the corporate world where you don't have to log in 9 to 5. And so that's what I'm very passionate about helping people do these days.
Well, I love that you spoke about, I mean, just in that last bit that, well, I love all of it, but I love that you talked about finding the right fit for you, because I think a lot of people misinterpret or misunderstand what success is, because success is really different for each person. And what you're looking to find out of your life and out of your entrepreneurship is very different for each person. And so trying to quantify it, oh, I need to hit this benchmark or this benchmark or this benchmark isn't always the case, because it is so uniquely independent upon the person and their own specific goals and motivations.
And getting really clear on that is going to help you build the business that you want. So I'm not motivated by Lamborghinis and fancy cars or fancy anything. I'm motivated by not having to work and traveling the world. So my dream life looked like, what can I do to automate the most of my business? I'm actually deeply introverted. So what can I do so that I don't have to speak to people most of the day? What can I do to make sure that I can travel and work from anywhere? And that business is very different to a lot of my colleagues. You know, a lot of them are building these big businesses and big teams and doing lots of one-on-one work and, you know, growing these huge businesses. That's not my motivation. My motivation is freedom and exploring and adventuring. So getting really clear on what your motivation is going to help make sure that you set up your business in the correct way.
100% agree. You have to be tethered to that. Otherwise, there is, and not tethered in a holding you down, but when you can be connected to that, it's a motivator beyond every other motivator. Also, I'm also a cancer survivor. I don't know if you know that. And I remember it being like a huge pivotal point in my life as well, because of the health things of saying like, okay, I have to be my biggest advocate. How am I going to take this forward? And I had young children at the time. And I'm sure that like, with everything that you said and done, like those health aspects too, which again, like I understand, I know they still play a huge role in like propelling me forward, making sure that I am living my authentic, like what that is, the self-care, the life that I want, creating, also finishing what my purpose is or living in my purpose and all of that. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit about that, because a lot of people have something sometimes not as serious as cancer, sometimes more serious, and they just kind of like curl up, give up on life, or not as vibrant after. And granted, I know some things are the physical mechanics that change in our body, and you know, we're not the same person, but I'd love for you to touch a little bit on that, because I think it's really important.
So my cancer journey, I got cancer as a young woman. I think I was 25 or 26. And at that point, I was working 7 days a week. So I worked in that fashion design business 7 days a week. I worked every birthday. I worked every Christmas day. I did not take a day off. And that's what I knew. I just knew that I could outwork everyone. And if I worked harder, I would get there. And that has now led me to realize that you will literally work yourself to death if you just keep going down that path. So I had to implement, as you talked about, self-care. I had to figure out my physical, you know, even just the way, the food and the way I was treating my body. And that really has set me up to enjoy a much healthier later life, because I've sort of been biohacking for like 15 years because I had to, not because, you know, I was passionate about fasting or everyone was doing juice cleanses, you know, 15 years ago. That was not it. I had to do that because I had cancer. And so now when I look back on that, I do actually think it's been really great for my to set myself up in really good health in you know, middle-aged life, because I had that very deep illness when I was a lot younger.
Do you pull any of those key aspects so into business and what you are teaching others, like to have that determination, that drive, also, to be creative and to make the changes you need so that way you have long-term success, because all of your businesses, you've had great success in your businesses where you've taken it and you've scaled it, like, and you've duplicated, and obviously you teach others to do that. Yeah, what aspects kind of like marry together around that?
When I look at all of my businesses, they have all been teaching me certain skills and providing me with experiences and insights, and even the hardships as much as the highs that have led me to really create this kind of life for myself. And so this is what I believe everyone has. We all have lessons or skills or insights or experiences that we can now share with other people, whether that's in a book, whether it's a course, whether it's a coaching program. And it's only when you start to look back at your life that you realize you have actually acquired a lot of really incredible skills that not everyone has. So not everyone has been on a health scare journey. So they haven't developed these skills that they now teach other people. And so in a lot of my programs, because I'm speaking with female entrepreneurs, a lot of my programs start with a mindset module. So we talk a lot about what, for instance, in my personal branding program, what mindsets you need to overcome to be able to go and put yourself out there and call yourself an expert and be seen and heard on video and have your voice heard. So it's only in hindsight that I look back that I realize that all of my experiences have led me to be able to share this with other people now.
It sounds like you have a lot of really amazing successes. So do you feel like the idea of the failure is what holds a lot of entrepreneurs back? Just the idea of it.
Yeah, I mean, and people think that once they fail, it's going to be the end of the world. And my story is really heavily rooted in pivoting and resilience and picking myself back up after I've had quite a very hard downfall. And I think looking at those times, people are so scared that, like, I don't want to start just in case I fail. Well, if you fail, you're just going to go back to the job as the engineer or whatever it was, and you'll just continue on that path anyway, which is what you were destined to do when you started this whole thing. So, getting ahead of yourself and thinking, what happens if it's going to fail? Well, you'll just go back to the thing that you were doing before you started the business. So it's not that big a deal anyway.
That's an interesting perspective, because normally I feel like when they think about failure, it's a much worse case scenario. It's, oh, if I fail, the world will crumble and everyone will laugh at me, rather than it's basically the status quo that you have now. So why not try?
So why not give it a shot? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So after mindset, when you're working with your clients, what is the next biggest thing that you feel is powerful for them? So the getting clarity mindset, working on the mindset, and then what's your next biggest, the powerful thing that you work with them on?
I think women in particular have a really hard time understanding that the things that they know are actually genius to someone else. Because we just think, oh, well, everyone knows, like, for instance, everyone knows how to do personal branding and publicity. Everyone knows how to, do Facebook ads and hack funnels, because that's what I know. But then when you're speaking with other people, you don't realize that not everyone knows the things that you know. So this is what's called a genius zone. And we women in particular don't really recognize our own genius, or recognize that not everyone has the knowledge that we have. So that's something that's getting that understanding with my clients and with my students is really powerful, because then they go, oh, I could probably teach this to the person who's one step or two steps behind me.
Isn't that incredible? We were just talking about that zone of genius, and how, and we often catch ourselves, like, it's just so easy for us. And we're like, wait, because currently we're like rewriting like all of our copy and different things and working with our team. And we forget that people, like even us who teach it, we forget that people don't know what we know, and vice versa. Right. And so I love that you help them work in their zone of genius from a rooted place of their why and their mindset, because we can often be tricked into thinking something that is our zone of genius, or putting it on, even though it's not the right fit or not really connected, but we're trying really hard.
And with that, I think it's important, if you are trying a genius on, you think it's sort of working, but not really working, I do encourage you to just keep going down the path, because although whatever the first thing is may not be the final thing, as you've heard in my story, each of the things have led to the final thing. So, you know, if I didn't start the fashion styling business, I probably wouldn't be doing this business. If I wasn't doing, you know, if I didn't start teaching my very first course, which was the fashion styling course, for sure I wouldn't be teaching my online business course right now. So whilst the fashion styling course wasn't the end course and wasn't what I wanted to talk about forever, it was the easiest course for me to teach at that time, because I was doing it, I was living it, breathing it, and I knew all about that. So I created that course. I got the knowledge of running an online business through that course. And then I pivoted when I realized, well, I'm not so passionate about talking about fashion styling anymore. I want to talk about, you know, business and entrepreneurship. So I do encourage people, if they are starting out, to just start doing the thing, start putting out, you know, whatever it is if it's a podcast, start the podcast. It may not be the best podcast you're ever going to create, but at least you're going through the motions and figuring out the processes of what you need to do to eventually build that great thing that you have in mind.
Absolutely. I think that it's so easy. I actually don't think it's almost shocking how easy it is to doubt yourself before you believe in yourself.
Well, I think that's how we've been raised certainly in my generation, we were raised to not really believe in ourselves. I think the younger generation is sort of getting a different experience of life. But and also, you know, keep in mind, I started my first business probably 15 years ago or so. That fashion label, it wasn't called entrepreneurship. It was called small business, and it was frowned upon. So it was like, oh, you can't get a job, you have to start a small business. So it wasn't, you know, this cool entrepreneur thing working online. This is a very new industry. I mean, even when I started my first online course, that was 2015, I used to have to explain to people what an online course was. So everyone who's listening to this that's thinking, oh, I don't know about this, it's still very new. And entrepreneurship is only very newly cool and hip on Instagram, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I think that a lot of the stigma is still, oh, you're self-employed, so you're just unemployed.
Yes.
Like, well, no, it's not quite the same,
Right.
but that's what it was for. I mean, I think for probably the last 20 years of me being in business, that's been the thing when you like type the box in, like I'm self-employed, which is a fancy way of saying you're unemployed. So I think
Exactly.
there's definitely been a shift recently, and I'm very happy to see it.
I know you work a lot with individuals that navigate or are navigating imposter syndrome. Can you talk a little bit about this?
So imposter syndrome is a syndrome where you internally believe that you don't have the qualifications typically to be able to do or say or teach the thing that you're teaching. And so you think that someone's going to come and find you out. So you think that you're going to be exposed as an imposter, as a fraud, as someone who doesn't, who shouldn't be there. Typically, and this is incredibly common. Like, we've heard of huge celebrities and very well-known, billionaires and millionaires, business owners that have expressed imposter syndrome and talked about how they have felt this. So I think the first thing to understand is that it's very normal, and then the second thing to understand is that it's something that, like all these belief systems, you manage yourself out of it. So you're not going to wake up one day and suddenly not have imposter syndrome because of, you got published in you got on the podcast, so now you don't have imposter syndrome. No, it's something that, like confidence or self-esteem or self-belief, is that you manage yourself out of it day to day by taking small inspired action steps that lead you away from that belief system and start developing a stronger belief system within yourself.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
we have chapters in our book about that one.
Yeah, no, we do. Our first book, we touched on imposter syndrome because it definitely is something. And I find that most of the successful people I know experience it. So even these hyper successful, just no one can dispute how successful they are, still feel that. And so that's why I know it's BS, and that you can overcome it with just these small actionable steps, because ultimately it's something that a trick your mind is playing on you. So you can choose to wallow in it or rise above it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. you spoke about, like, in our generation, how small business and entrepreneurship really wasn't a thing, or it was frowned upon, which I agree. Same thing, although I moved away from my family, so they couldn't really like say anything. But with that being said, a lot of people are on that cusp or in that first few years of in their business. And Amanda and I know we work with a lot of clients who are kind of like they're either afraid to make that leap, or they're in that first couple of years and they're just really struggling. They thought that they were going to get into business and it was just going to be overnight success and everything that you see on Instagram. And they're like, oh, should I go back to this or should I go back to that? How do you help them navigate, like, either that leap or in that moment in those first couple of years? And I'm not poo-pooing the ones who are 10, 15 years in the business who also feel that, but this is like crucial because they haven't experienced maybe success yet, or really the trueness of entrepreneurship.
I think entrepreneurship is the biggest personal development journey that anyone can go on. So if you think you're starting a business to earn money and run a business, actually, I think you're starting a business to experience all of your fears, all of your limiting beliefs, and be faced with all of this stuff that you carry on with every single day. So be prepared to go on that journey if you're starting a business. In addition, in the early years, I don't believe that your business should pay your bills for you. I believe that you should have a shitty side job that you work at night that requires no brain effort or energy, that just pays your rent and pays your bills, pays your mortgage for you, so that your business doesn't have to have that pressure on it. Because as soon as you start putting that kind of pressure on, I have to earn money this month, otherwise I can't pay my bills, then you get into a place of scarcity and a place of, this sort of anxious energy. And that's impossible to attract new clients or to attract business or to attract abundance when you're in that energy. So in the first couple of years, I always recommend having something that's going to tick over and pay your, keep you afloat, so that you don't have to put that level of pressure on your newbie business. And just keep in mind that you got into business because you were passionate about something. At least I hope that's why you got into your business, because you were passionate about sharing or coaching or teaching, whatever it is. So try and have that be the main focus, rather than how much money am I making in the first couple of years, at least.
That's an interesting perspective. I always kind of imagined, for me anyway, being like sink or swim. I always thought, go all in, because then you'll go all in and there won't be this like, oh, well, I can always fall back on my waitressing job, or because I definitely did that for a while. I can always fall back on this. But personally, for me, knowing my personality, I know that when I went all in, I had much more success, because it was this like sink or swim, go big or go home, go big or live in your car scenario. However, I do find a lot of my newer clients do feel like it's so much less stress on that scarcity mode when they do have that something to fall back on in the beginning years. So it's kind of like know your personality too, and know what's is it going to be more of a hindrance or help in that capacity?
Yeah, I'm also a sink or swim person, but I wouldn't recommend it to most people. You need to have a lot of tenacity and a lot of drive and a lot of self-motivation in the early days. But yes, if that's your personality type, then burn the bridges and start running towards the dreams.
Yeah. No, I also love that you brought up that perspective, because I am of the same boat as you guys. Burn the boat, as my Swedish friend would say. But I do love what you say. And I know that we work with clients that are kind of in that mode, and that might be single parents or single and not have like a spousal income or come from money where they can rely on a nest egg. And I would say, and I would love to hear your opinion, some of the things that we work with them on is make sure you can separate the two. So that way, that is your hustle in giving you the means to survive. This is your entrepreneurship. So that's your like job to pay the knit and grit. And this is this, and having goals and understanding like what that kind of that point is that you need to make in order to like get rid of this. And so that way you're treating it as two separate entities. You're making sure that you're investing the time in that particular entrepreneurial journey, and having certain goals and benchmarkers to work towards in a timeline. So that way you're still staying on point, because it can be very easy to get distracted with this over here, or just get comfortable and not and Amanda and I have the conversation all the time because we met in Hawaii. So we lived in Hawaii 16 years each. And, a lot of times people will do that. They want the entrepreneurship, but then they're like, oh, waves are up. I'm going to go because I have this waitressing job and I don't need to necessarily I don't have to put the efforts there. And I use Hawaii as an example. It's all over, but I love the waves are up kind of example. So
Surf's up, not showing up for work.
yeah.
Entrepreneurship does require a lot of self-drive and self-motivation. I think what you said there, setting goals, is very important, not only to give you a direction to head, but also to, as you said, know when you've reached the goals and you can start letting that, the side hustle or the extra job go. But yeah, self-drive and self-reliance and self-motivation is very big with entrepreneurship, especially when you're first starting out, because you're probably a solopreneur working by yourself. Your family has no idea what you're doing. Your friends don't understand what you're doing, and you're trying to find that support within communities. So I think working with someone like you guys, where you've got coaching and connection and community, is very important in the early days and throughout.
Absolutely. I actually feel like if I could go back to younger, far less wise Amanda, I would tell her, like, you need to seek help sooner and find a community way sooner, because it is such an invaluable tool in just your sanity, if nothing else, your sanity.
Yeah. Before we leave last little nuggets, you also talked a lot about resilience, and I don't want to assume, but I'm sure that that's one of the key attributes that's like helped you reinvent yourself over and over and over again, and very successfully. You've had scaled businesses, you've been on TV, you've done things that only people have dreamt of. So resilience, I know, is a big part of your journey, but what other attribute would you say has really kept you, that you feel that could be cultivated, an attribute that's really kept you like going forward, hustling, creating big things?
I would love to say something that's really inspiring, but actually the thing that has motivated me along the way has been the fear of a day job. So when I looked at my dad graduated from engineering. He got a job the day that he graduated, and he retired from that job, whatever it was, 50 years later, 60 years later. He never changed companies. He never traveled. He never saw the world. He hated his job every day of his life, but he did it because he had 4 kids that he wanted to provide for. I look at that, even just saying that out loud makes my stomach turn. That, I feel like, has been a big motivator for me, because I did not want to live my life like that. And the few times that I've gone back to a corporate job like engineering, and then I had a 1-year corporate gig in between my 2 businesses, I felt the life sucking out of me, and I looked forward for the next 40 years and just realized that this was not something that I was willing to suffer through, and that I would take any hit in any business so long as I didn't have to go back and get a 9-to-5 job. So I guess I'm saying that I'm motivated by the fear of a 9-to-5. I don't know if that's the right motivation for everyone else out there, but that's what has kept me going and making sure, like, I do not want to go back to that.
Don't be ashamed. That's a real fear. It's a real fear. There are times when I've been on my lower side of entrepreneurship where I have, for like the briefest of moments, like, I guess I can get a real job. I'm like, nope, no, I can't do it. I will never do it again. I don't care. I don't care what I have to work through, figure out, pivot.
Yep.
I can't do it again, because, and there's that quote about it, that so many people die at 25, but aren't buried into their 75. And that is, I see it in family members and friends, and it's a soul sucking lack of life. And they might get their 2 weeks every year where they go and take a vacation, but that's not living on my terms. And again, we go back to the beginning where we talk about, like, what's your motivation? What's your goal? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a 9-to-5. It's just not for me.
And so that's where it comes into what's right for you. What are your values? What do you envision your life to be like? And I think that's the beauty of this online industry that's now a thing, because again, it wasn't a thing when I was an engineer, and it's available to everyone. Like, the entry, a position to entry is so simple. Like, all you need to do is find a coach that can help you, find some courses that can help you. Like, the information that is available these days blows my mind. When I was the celebrity stylist, I tried to hire mentors to help me and to guide me, and no one would help me because they're like, you're my competitor. I'm not going to help you. There was no such thing as online courses. So I think, these days it's so easy for everyone to start an online business, a coaching business, whatever it is, write your book, start your podcast. There's so much free information out there. And it's really just a matter of whether you're going to do it or whether you're going to stay in your position that you're in now.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That comment that you just made, which, I've been doing Zoom way before Zoom was cool and doing things, you're a pioneer. You definitely have set the course for a lot of women and others behind you. But it's interesting because Amanda and I talk about competition versus collaboration or like mentorship, and just had a little aha moment that probably like this whole move towards the online courses and definitely the more accessibility because of social media and different things like that has kind of moved the marker, where back in the day it was hard to find people that would, everybody viewed you as a competition. Like that was the standard. And it's still now in some aspects, but you definitely have it a lot more where people want to be collaborative. They see their lane, they see how, multiple can rise the ship, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together type of thing. And it's kind of a little bit of an aha moment that I wonder, I'm going to have to do a little bit of research, but I wonder if like the online courses and different things like that have really been like pushing the marker to be having people be more collaborative, because back in the day, it was not that way.
No. And back in the day, for my first two businesses, I had to blood, sweat, and tears to figure it out. There was no I couldn't just watch a YouTube video and figure out how to sell to international distributors. There was no such thing. So the information age and the information that's available to us, I just think is really making this sort of industry so much more accessible to everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I never Googled anything in the beginning. I actually went to libraries and looked up like contract laws and libraries, folks, libraries, the olden days.
Was there
doing
back in the day, Amanda? I'm just kidding.
I'm sure it existed, but it was probably still on the status.
Well, I used to have to cold call customers and ask them if I could post out a catalog, and then they would fax me their order. And to get the order, sometimes I would have to call them back, go, hey, what did you think of my collection? And then I would have them tell me over the phone how bad they thought my collection was. So I can't tell you the number of times that I was rejected on, as a 20-something girl by someone going, no, I don't like any of your stuff that you've just, put your love and heart into designing. So I think that as well has really set me up to have a bit more resilience than most.
Yeah, for sure.
I love cold calling though. That was one that I did. Yes, I still do. I mean, my bit of fear-ish, I think, because I haven't done it in so long, but that's not true. I do it, but not as frequent. But yeah, I used to be a cold caller and I used to love it. I actually was a telemarketer for a while. Didn't love the telemarketing side, like the smile and dial in that way, but I did love I love cold calling. I love door knocking.
None of us like the rejection. No one likes the rejection. It doesn't matter how good the cold call, it's still the rejection.
Oh, I didn't say I like rejection. I like the thrill of anyway, I know, different breed, anywho. but that's so cool. I think, and Amanda and I have spoke about this, and we've even written about it in one or both of our books, is that those old school lessons and things that we went through, even though it might not look the same now, they definitely, you can spin it in a way, and they're tools that will never go away. It's like the hammer. You learn using the hammer first, not the big bulldozer, and that hammer never goes away. You might use it differently sometimes, but it's like a feather in your cap that you have that can definitely help you navigate certain situations.
I was just thinking, as you were talking about, you love cold calling. In my mind, I'm thinking, I think cold calling is going to make a reappearance after everyone goes through the whole automated funnel, everything. I think the next iteration after all the automation will be the old-fashioned cold calling. So you might get a second win there, Lynn.
Hey, maybe we'll create a course, Amanda.
Exactly.
It is a skill set we both have, and it is definitely not taught these days.
Yeah.
We might circle back to that.
We'll give you credit, Amber. We'll give you credit.
Love it.
Yeah, awesome.
This has been an awesome conversation. Amber, how can people get a hold of you when they want to?
Yeah, come and find me on Instagram and let me know that you found me on the Badasserie pod. And if anyone wants to check out the book, Dream Life, it's available for sale now.
Absolutely. Is it available on Amazon?
No, direct through my website. And we
Perfect.
go through a funnel on there. And yeah, it's a great book. I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of it.
Well, is there any other last nugget you want to leave our audience with before we close out?
I feel like if you're listening to this and you're feeling cold and you're having funny feeling in your stomach, like an inkling, like I think this is available to me, then you should go and do it. Figure it out. Figure out what you can teach to someone else, whether it be in a course or a coaching program or a book or a pod. If you're feeling called to do this, then it is available to you. And I really encourage you to at least explore down the path like I did when I first started this business. I just did it on the weekends. I figured out what I was passionate about. I took courses, I watched YouTube clips, I listened to podcasts like this, and that's how this whole thing started for me. So if this is where you're at, I encourage you to keep going on your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amber. And if you are resonate with anything that was spoke about today, make sure that you hit subscribe, share this podcast with people who you feel that can get a lot out of it, and make sure that you're following Amber and hit her up on IG. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
My absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful to be able to connect with you guys. It was a great conversation.
Yes. And as always, everybody, get after it.
All right, everyone, it's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.